let's talk about this Niner O-line problem.
Yeah.
Everyone, all of a sudden, people are like, they gotta improve the right side of this offensive line. It's terrible. Yeah. It's the same issue in the first Super Bowl that they lost when they had Mike Person and Mike McGlinchey over there. Do you
Yeah.
think what do you think the Niners could, should, would do about it?
Well, let's talk about what they should do. It's hard to predict what the Niners will do because they always surprise me, it seems like. What they should do is, and I think what I think they're going to do, I think the starting five to finish the season will also be starting to start the next season. But they should also be investing heavily in the offensive line for the future. McGlinchey's going into his last year. Brendel, I believe, is going into his last year. Burford, we don't know what's going to happen to Burford. Feliciano's a free agent right now, so I don't even know if they're going to bring him back, especially after he kind of threw Burford under the bus. I don't know how that's going to work out. But I would not surprise me at all if we get the same offensive line starting for the 49ers this year. But they really got to start thinking about long-term what they're going to be doing with this line. If they want to be competing heavily in the future, they need some studs, man. They really need some studs. They can't be okay with just mid-level offensive line outside of Trent Williams. Aaron Banks has had really good moments. He's a upper. He's like a B guard, in my opinion. But all those other guys are just kind of there, right? They're okay. Brunell's okay. Feliciano, Burford, they're okay. McKivitz is like, he's all right. You can't get by with that. This game is won and lost in the trenches, and the 49ers have been trying to get by and win Super Bowls with being okay on the offensive line, and it has not worked. They need studs. They need some difference makers out there, and that's been the biggest problem with the 49ers. In 7 years, Grant, only one has kind of hit, which is Aaron Banks. I mean, you could argue McGlinchey, but to me, that's not a hit. That's a miss, right? Especially for how high they drafted him. We'll see what happens to Burford. Maybe he works out. But in 7 years, really one good one, Aaron Banks, that they've drafted. They got to change that, and that's the biggest problem.
Well, the way I see it is like it's just an issue of prioritization. In the salary cap era, you can't be strong everywhere. I mean, you can be, but you have to decide where you want to make your biggest investments financially and where you want to save money financially. Every team makes that choice, that bargain. And the Niners consistently have decided to save money on offensive line and the secondary. I wouldn't do that. I would rather save money on the defensive line than the offensive line. That's just me. But until they decide, like, they're the opposite of the Chiefs. The Niners are saving money not only on the offensive line, but at quarterback. They won't be forever, but the Chiefs are the opposite. So I think with an offensive genius like Kyle Shanahan, who knows exactly what he wants, you don't have to spend a ton of money on wide receivers and running backs. You don't. Andy Reid doesn't. He's doing great things with Isaiah Pacheco and Rashee Rice. That's enough for him. He spends on his tight end too. Yeah. Other than that, as long as the Niners are so committed to spending the most on wide receivers and running backs, they're always going to be weak at offensive line.
Yeah.
Always. It's the trade-off they expect.
Well, they don't prioritize it. I think most people, if you ask them, what are your most important positions on a football team? Most people will tell you number one is quarterback. Most people will tell you number two is protecting that quarterback. Not only that, this is a really run-heavy team. So it's not just about protecting the quarterback. It's about opening up the run game. If you had better offensive linemen, this run game is going to improve, which is a major part of this team. But even when John Lynch was interviewed, when he joined the 49ers, they asked him what their priorities were. Their priority was quarterback and then defensive line. They didn't even mention the offensive line when they asked what their priorities are for building the team. So it starts at the top, their philosophy and how they prioritize. There's something about this team, about Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch, that thinks they can get by with technique and schematics with average linemen. They think if you just get a really good left tackle, you're good. Protect the blind side, you're good. Everything else we could figure out. That hasn't been the case. It's been a continuous problem for the 49ers, and they need to readjust how they look at this team and how they prioritize. They need to get on board with the rest of the whole freaking NFL. Your second most important position on any football team is your offensive line, period, point blank. And it's time that the 49ers start treating it as such.
Yeah, trade Ayuk for an offensive lineman.
I don't think you need to. I don't think it helps. I don't think trading Brandon Ayuk is going to make that much of a difference. I think there's a really good – this is like maybe one of the strongest lineman class in a long time. There's going to be some really good offensive linemen, and I think no matter who they
I
draft,
fully
they're not
admit
going to start.
I haven't dug into any of these players yet, so I just want to say that.
Yeah, there's some talented dudes out there, and I think they're going to be available at 31. And there's going to be some tackles out there. But the scary thing for me is on the exit interview, Shanahan again said, "Hey, we're not going to prioritize an offensive line." Right? He literally said we're not prioritizing any position heading into the draft, and maybe that's a little smoke and mirrors, not giving away your hand. Hopefully, that's what it is. But if they truly believe they don't have an issue at offensive line, you can expect more of the same moving forward. You can expect this 49ers team to do really well, go far, ultimately lose because of this offensive line. That's been the issue. They got blown up against the Eagles in the NFC Championship game last year, and they got blown up against the Chiefs this year.
They did. They did.
It's the problem. You can't win.
It's the problem.
And it's like, you can't win.
When the Chiefs lost the one Super Bowl, it was because of their offensive line, and they learned from. They're like, we're never letting this happen again.
Right.
We are absolutely making this our number one priority. How come the Niners can't learn like that? It's been a huge reason why you guys haven't won your 2 Super Bowls, and you're just going to run it back with Colton McKivitz at right tackle. No offense to Colton McKivitz. He's doing the best he can. I have respect for the job he's doing, but can't you get – I mean, you have a 4th-round pick and a 5th-round pick who are overachieving on your offensive line. Can't you find some premium talent that add to the competition?
Well, it's because they do what they do. They do what they do. Yeah. They don't change. They don't learn from anything. Give me an example of something they learn from. Like, give me one example, Grant, of something they saw happen to them that ended their season, and they're like, never again. We're going to change that. Give me one example of that. I haven't seen one.
Well, okay, I'll try. I mean, they had Jaquiski Tartt drop that interception, and all of a sudden it dawned on them like, oh, we need safeties who can catch the ball. So all of a sudden they're bringing in these playmakers with ball skills. Like, it seems like at certain positions they may make little tweaks, but at offensive line they're like, sorry, we just don't invest in this position. It's just not what we do here. Really,
it doesn't make any sense.
Imagine if you did.
Think about this 49ers team with Harbaugh's offensive line. Think about how freaking good they would be. Just ridiculous. I mean, you got to give it a
difference between Harbaugh and Kyle. Harbaugh doesn't mess around on the offensive line. Kyle does.
Yeah. I guarantee you Jim Harbaugh's going to go
around at that position.
I guarantee you watch what Jim Harbaugh does in LA. I keep wanting to say San Diego Chargers, but look what he does in LA with these Chargers. I promise you he's going to invest in that offensive line from the get-go because it's so important. Most people understand this in football. For some reason, Kyle doesn't think it's important. It's just we need a good left tackle, and we're good. It's not going to cut it. It's not going to be good enough. You've lost this team, Jed York. You lost 3 Super Bowls straight. You got to figure it out. You got to do something different. The definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again, expecting different results. What you need to do differently is invest in this offensive line.